So thank you all for joining us here today. My name is Janet Hallows. I'm Director of Climate Programs and Nature-Based Climate Solutions with the Carbon Market Institute. Carbon Market Institute, for those of you who don't know, is an Australian-based organisation. We are an independent, member-based organisation, obviously working through carbon markets towards accelerating transition to net zero. And I'm joined today by a wonderful expert panel. We are talking about Asia-Pacific carbon markets and Article 6 and the opportunities for cooperation. And so we have quite a diverse panel here today. We have joining me just over here, David Tao from TEM, Takashi from Japan. So, sorry, I'm just going to talk about the different areas and countries probably. Ivy Yin is from S&P Global, and Apasai from the Fijian Government Climate Change Department. So a wonderful, diverse panel, and I'm very happy to moderate this one today, and we will try and get to some questions at the end if we have time. So I guess just to provide some context for this session today, obviously within the frame of some of the discussion, carbon market and Article 6 discussions going on here at COP and negotiations. If we look at the UNEP emissions gap report, it identified that enhanced global cooperation and investment in climate solutions through carbon markets and the implementation of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement has the potential to deliver an additional 4 to 12 billion tonnes of emission reductions by 2030 annually. So quite a significant amount. Since the Article 6 rulebook was finalised at COP26 in Glasgow, over 100 countries have expressed their willingness to use cooperative approaches in their updated nationally determined contributions. Notably, the Indo-Pacific region has seen a surge of Article 6 activities in the last 12 months particularly. So with major economies like Japan, South Korea and Singapore actively seeking bilateral partnerships and formalising memorandums of understanding to secure international credits. Several countries in the region have entered into bilateral trade agreements to become exporters of internationally transferred mitigation outcomes, or ITMOs. In Southeast Asia, countries including Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar and the Philippines are engaged as potential host countries for Article 6.2 projects. And similarly, in the Pacific, all the Melanesian countries, so Papua New Guinea, Fiji, Solomon Islands and Vanuatu, have signed MOUs with various buyer countries, while two Polynesian countries, both Samoa and Tonga, are in the exploratory phase of considering becoming a seller of ITMOs. So you can see quite a lot of substantial activity happening at the moment. Pacific Island countries' participation in Article 6 has been primarily driven by the potential of the market mechanism to drive greater ambition in overall global emissions reductions. Together, these countries hold a significantly higher ratio of carbon sequestration potential per capita than any other region comparable in size. So significant potential as well. However, the realisation of the potential of Article 6 implementation requires a coordinated and strategic effort to meet the unique needs of Pacific Island countries. And I think we really need to stress, and hopefully we'll get to, the importance of market readiness in the region. Countries are not yet, even though they're signing MOUs, are not yet ready in a market sense to engage. Potential host countries, potentially this is a role, and we'll try to speak to this today, should start building market readiness capacity at the government, policy and practitioner levels. So many different actors involved who need to be very quickly up to speed with regards to capacity. So panel now, well, coming to you. If you could each maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and your role in the market. And then just a quick opening question with regards to an Asia-Pacific perspective. what do you see as the main drivers for Asia-Pacific countries to develop carbon markets or carbon pricing mechanisms? I'll start with you, David.
Thanks, Janet. Hi, everyone. I'm David Tao. I'm Managing Director Asia Pacific for TEM, a large Australian project developer and intermediary in carbon markets. We're the largest supplier of voluntary offsets into the Australian market, and we're also the largest developer of carbon projects in the Pacific. I live in Singapore, and we do projects across Asia Pacific, across Red Plus, Blue Carbon, cook stoves, e-cook stoves. So we're quite have quite some breadth. Just in terms of the opportunity in Asia Pacific, obviously Article 6 is a key opportunity to unlock potential. The thing about Asia Pacific, more than most other regions, it's quite a diverse region. It has very rich developed countries, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Japan, South Korea, who have great need to address the carbon emissions and to make provision for carbon avoidance and removal. It has a number of countries in fast transition from developing to developed status who have similar needs, and it has many countries in least developed country status who are devoid of investment, and investment is needed for them to grow their standards of living as well as to enable transition to more sustainable development. So with this combination of factors, the Asia-Pacific region is uniquely placed to actually facilitate regional trading schemes that do allow investment into developing countries that meet the needs of developed countries and transitioning countries. We're seeing obviously many countries already entering bilateral arrangements across the region to take advantage of these opportunities, but obviously the Article 6 provides the potential for regional schemes, and regional schemes are going to be more effective. They're going to drive scale, and they're going to drive the opportunity for collective outcomes at a high level across the region. As Janet mentioned, market readiness is a very big issue. We face it every day as we work around the region. I'm fortunate. I'm part of the party for the government of Papua New Guinea here at COP. We're very active in Papua New Guinea, but it is one of the poorest countries in the region. It is a country that's desperately seeking investment, but unable to build the policy architecture and infrastructure needed to drive that investment. So the developed world needs to support these economies. I know there's a lot going on, but a lot more needs to be done, and there's an amazing opportunity. If we're going to drive emissions down by 50% to avoid the most catastrophic climate change over the next decade, we need to engage and use Article 6 and other market mechanisms to enable this transfer of investment and carbon outcomes across regions. Thanks, Janet.
Yes, I'm Takashi Hongo, Mitsui Global Studies Institute, and my role is about the carbon market is analyze the policy and the market and provide advice to our institute owner, Mitsui and company. But in addition to that one, I participated in the COSIA, for instance, as an expert advisor to government. And also I'm council member of the International Emission Trading Association. So anyhow, your question, very important question, what is the driver for carbon market? Carbon market, as you mentioned, it is a really important economic measure to reduce the emission globally and economically. But the driver, if I myself identify what is one single driver, most important driver, I would like to say it's a demand for carbon. So demand for credit, that is very important. So I introduced to some extent about the Japanese situation. Japan's NDC is 46% by 2030. So this is really the challenging target. And also 2050 net zero, this is also very, very challenging because the tourism, in case of Japan, are there. First one is so-called hard to abate sector are there. And also, second one is limited potential of renewable. Because the renewable, one of the nature of the renewable is the very big space is necessary. Past space point of view, not so efficient compared to the fossil fuel. That is a weak point of the renewable. So Japan would like to use renewable more and more. However, it's not enough. That's the reason why Japan proposed emission reduction globally, not only by Japan, but also the other country. Global emission reduction is important. So for instance, in case of Japan, the very big demand for the international offset credit are there. So I think this demand will stimulate the reduction project in Asia country, or including Australia, because many Japanese companies invest in Australia, Thailand, Indonesia, and island country as well. So globally, we would like to reduce the emission. So what is the driver? My answer as an economist, it's a demand. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Ivy. I'm with S&P Global. So I'm an energy transition specialist. My daily job is to writing up news and conducting market analysis for carbon policies, carbon market everywhere in this region. And in the broader S&P family, we are actually having, for example, a very powerful pricing team. They're doing price assessment for a lot of markets in this region already to provide transparency to this nascent market. And also we have consulting arms. We're helping companies to do ESG accounting. We're helping countries to develop their national registries. So for the question, what Article 6 means and what are the key drivers, I think I have 3 very brief perspectives. One is for countries like Japan, Singapore. They definitely need lower cost carbon credits and a bigger pool of supply because they have limited domestic resources. For example, Japan's domestically produced J credits, if I remember correctly, the renewable credits are priced about $20 per ton, which imply actually a high cost for implementing the project domestically. And for Singapore, same thing. The carbon tax is going to increase to $25 per ton next year. So the companies definitely need Article 6.2 in particular to help them to find lower cost approach for abatement. So the second part is for nature-based solutions, especially countries like Malaysia and also the Pacific Island nations. Actually, voluntary carbon market have already do a remarkable job in terms of helping them realize natural resources can give them money or money can grow on trees. But in recent year, actually in this year particularly, there's an elephant in the room. The media negative reports have resulted in a lower deep dive in VCM price. So there have been hopes I've heard from traders from almost everywhere in the region. Article 6 market can give us higher price or price premium in carbon credits because it is a UN-backed carbon crediting mechanism. They hope there are going to be higher standards, greater integrity. So yeah, that is part of the hope. And the last point is for capital intensive and technology intensive projects. So Article 6 is a great opportunity for developing countries to attract capitals from foreign investors and also technological support from foreign countries, especially developed countries. If we, for example, using India, if we look at their Article 6.2 implementation plan, so almost all the projects are capital intensive ones. For example, CCUS and long-distance transmission of renewable power, sustainable aviation, biofuels, hydrogen, so all of them are actually hard to achieve by developing countries alone. So Article 6 can be powerful in achieving this purpose. Yeah, that's all from me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I'm Apisai from actually, I'm from the Ministry of Fisheries and Forestry.
Excuse me for that.
For for Fiji. I'm working under the government, and I'm specifically looking after our RED Plus projects in Fiji, which is supported by, funded by the World Bank under the FCPF funding. Okay, for our information, as we are all aware that Pacific small island developing states, we have contributions that are negligible compared to other Pacific island countries, to other Asian countries, like in terms of resources, in terms of technology. So we cannot compare the small island developing states in the Pacifics to Asian countries. So however, our ambitious, we have a very ambitious NDCs that demonstrating the leadership and the stewardship to achieve climate negotiations and ambitious NDCs that requires millions of dollars for climate finance, and thus require the explorations of all means of climate finance, that including carbon markets. In Fiji's NDCs, it also lined the Fiji's intents to use carbon markets to achieve our NDC. So we are working very closely, not only the Fiji government, but also with our partnership, our NGOs. We are also working with our CSOs and also faith organization, and also our communities, trying to get, especially on what we need to achieve in terms of our ambitions, what has been in our NDCs. So that's basically what we are doing for Fiji, and also there are other projects that we are trying to get into negotiation with bilaterals from other countries. But we are now trying to establish the system, our system, especially our legislations, so that it can all ties up with before we engage into the carbon markets and all these things. Thank you.
Thank you, APAC. Again, sincere apologies for giving the wrong department there, but Fiji is actually quite advanced in some regards. Carbon Market Institute has been working with the Climate Change Division of the Fijian government in the development of a carbon market strategy roadmap. And so there's a lot of internal thinking with regards to the role of carbon markets within Fiji, and also in developing a Climate Change Act that has quite specific considerations around carbon market engagement. So there's a lot happening in the region. Similarly, Papua New Guinea, who recently had a moratorium, developing up some quite sophisticated legislation and regulation around carbon markets. Ivy, I might just come back to you. You touched a little bit on the opportunities for Article 6 and carbon markets, but I just wonder if you can build on that, some of the major opportunities that you see in the Asia-Pacific region.
Okay, thanks for the question. So I think for major opportunities, definitely Singapore, Japan, the buyer countries are the key drivers, because they do sign like memorandum of understanding or memorandum of cooperation with like thousands of countries, and that is really have like great courage as the first movers. However, I do believe that behind those opportunities, or whether these opportunities can turn into actual achievement, there are several hurdles to be resolved. For example, I mean, of course, we have countries like Fiji, they already become an active part in terms of signing all those bilateral agreements, but we do have other countries in this region. They're very, very conservative. It's almost like two camps. One camp is developing countries very active to sign the Article 6.2 deals, and the other type of countries very, very conservative, so that they want to prioritize their own NDC and they almost don't want to export any credits. So I think we need greater synergies in instead of letting those kind of polarization continues. So of course, the opportunity is huge, but the uncertainty is huge as well. So that's my thoughts. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And I'd turn everyone's attention to a wonderful document by AITA, actually, which is outlining some of those MOUs between different countries in the Asia-Pacific region. So you mentioned Japan, and you know, as a major donor country. Takashi, if we just talk about maybe how should donor countries be thinking about 6.4 and 6.2, and what engagement with host countries should be underway now in preparation?
Preparation, yeah. So I think as Abby said, some countries are very conservative to sell the credit, but we need to think about the benefit of the international emission trading again. So if the reduction project are realized by the support of the non-host country entities, particularly the industry, at that case, the technology and the finance are going to be mobilized. So at the negotiation at every COP, so that many developing countries talking about the finance and the technology. So these two elements is the keys for the decarbonization in this country as well. So I think the emission trading is one of the ideal options for mobilizing the finance and technology. So in case of Japan, is the JCM, Joint Credit Mechanism. Thank you, Abby explained. This is a unique one because it covers not only the renewable energy efficiency, but also forest or everything, anyhow everything. And particularly the Japanese government are eager to push the energy efficiency. So from the decarbonized hierarchy, so one of the first step is reducing energy demand, then shifting to the low or zero emission energy. And the remaining and the residual emission can be offset by carbon credit. So from that point of view, pushing the energy efficiency, that would be the first step. So I think also like Fiji, of course, the red potential is big, but to reduce the emission, the first thing is reduce the energy, improve the energy efficiency. So I think the Japan's approach, particularly the JCM, is one of the unique point is push the energy efficiency project.
Thank you, and I'll hand. Oh, there we go. It's long enough. David, I will turn to you now. Coming from TEM and bringing a private sector perspective on markets in Asia Pacific, what's your view of the role of institutional investors in encouraging and supporting carbon market development and low carbon transition in the Asia Pacific region?
Thanks, Janet. Just I'd like to pick up Takashi's comment earlier that it needs to be demand driven, and of course that's true. The demand opportunities do exist already. The investors exist, the need exists. We have a large number of countries across the region that have targets that they're not going to achieve through action in their own hard to abate sectors in those developed countries, and to then go on to Ivy's point about some brave countries commencing the market linkages between with Singapore and Japan. Unfortunately, both those schemes are while applauded for being first movers, they're both quite small schemes, and they're not going to move the dial in terms of investment. We need to build stronger linkages right across the region. If it's bilateral, then that's good enough. preferably it'll be regional and multilateral. Countries like Australia have an enormous deficit in their ability to meet their NDC, and at the moment there's a very buoyant market in Australia, which is driven by the safeguard mechanism, which is facilitating substantial investment, which is really important. But eventually, the ability to sustain that investment at prices that are that meet, going back and thinking about marginal cost abatement curves is going to be very difficult in coming years. And then countries like New Zealand, who have an extremely difficult challenge to meet their net zero target, these countries need to be encouraged to open up the markets. The investment will follow if the demand channels are created. So I think that really needs to be the priority, and that courage that Ivy talked about needs to be extended a bit further. Australia's made some false starts with the Indo-Pacific Carbon Offset Scheme. It's a great framework, but it seems to be struggling at the moment. It's on the back burner, it seems. And I think we probably, things like the ICVCM are a great addition to the landscape, because they will provide a stronger integrity lens, which is one of the factors inhibiting the linkage between markets. So hopefully this build up a policy infrastructure, because the investment demand is there. We've seen in Australia now that it's got a strong compliance market, that there's massive flows of investment coming from Japan, coming from Singapore, coming from many other countries, as well as locally into projects in Australia. And so the demand is there. It just needs to be unlocked through the policy infrastructure, through Article 6.
Thank you, David. And you did mention IPCOS, the Indo-Pacific Carbon Offsetting Scheme, the Australian government's scheme. It's actually just had a change of course, which is really focusing on capacity building at the moment. And I think we did talk about, the need for market readiness. It's probably actually a really good space for Australia to be in at this stage, is supporting market readiness in the region. Just quickly, David, coming back to what you were saying about investment, do you see early signals or signs from some of these Article 6 pilots in terms of them crowding in private investment?
Yeah, so we've got a portfolio of carbon development projects in various stages of development, from issuance right back through to concept. Obviously, we take those to market. We show them to investors, to offset buyers, and to others. And pretty much every single potential supporter, investor, or offset buyer is asking for Article 6 corresponding adjustments being attached to those. We have strong ongoing voluntary schemes that TEM sustains, and they do provide a base load to support the investment in those voluntary projects. But if we could switch those to projects with corresponding adjustments, which we're actively seeking, and there's some of the countries with the great on Fiji for being so actively engaged, but many of the larger countries that have the greatest opportunity to create carbon projects, the Indonesias of the world, the Papua New Guineas, some of the other countries with very big resources, natural resources, are yet to get their head around it and all their policy infrastructure. So the opportunity is heavily constrained at the moment. If we can unlock those, there's a very substantial supply of investment funds immediately available for those projects. So that's what we're seeing on a day-to-day basis.
Great, and that was a great segue also to Fiji. Apasai, if we, David, if you just want to pass that over. If obviously Fiji's got a significant experience, solid experience with RED Plus projects and programs, and Fiji's also signalled its intention to use carbon markets within its NDC. Can you just talk a little bit through some of the thinking around that at the moment, and also some of the initiatives you're seeing coming out of Fiji?
Yeah, thank you, Janet. Like for Fiji, of the 30% of our emission reduction target under the Fiji's NDC, 20% is envisioned to be achieved under the external climate finance. So as a developing nations, we have explored many other climate financing mechanisms and carbon markets, therefore, and explored to consider. So to address carbon markets in Fiji, Fijian government, we've, under the Climate Change Act 2021, dedicated a section which is on carbon markets. So this is currently supplementary regulation. There are also supplementary regulations that are in place and been developed to ensure the transparency, environmental integrity and safeguard of all Fijians undertaking emissions reductions and removal projects that must be protected. So the Fijian government see that carbon market is an opportunity for the country to engage with private sectors and also with communities in implementation of its NDC. So in such, we found out that under the consultation with our stakeholders to finalize carbon markets roadmap strategies, and we thank to CMI, they are assisting Fiji in our roadmap for our carbon markets. And also the way forward for progress of our carbon markets for Fiji. With that note, I believe that there's a huge potential for Fiji to tap into carbon markets, not only into our RED Plus project, but we also energy, as mentioned by Takashi, and also there's potential for that, especially for small island countries for clean energy, to tap into those kind of markets that are available out there for developed countries. Thank you.
Absolutely, and if we look at one of the 6.2 pilots at the moment with the Click Foundation in Bangkok, that is an e-bus project. So, you know, really looking and focusing down or drilling down on the energy transition. And a segue back to you, Ivy, because you're an energy transition specialist, that's your area of expertise. To what extent do you think Article 6 can assist in the acceleration of energy transition?
So I have to reinforce that great uncertainty because I don't have the magic wand. So I do believe to make Article 6 really concretely accelerate energy transition, I hope every developing country can do something like Fiji to set a clear roadmap in terms of how we're going to leverage the carbon market, how our NDC is linked to the carbon market. So what I feel is some developing countries, maybe they are too proactive. I mean, we sell the carbon credit, but I mean, just for Japan, for Singapore, currently they only have MOU or MOC. There's no real deal in terms of how the percentage of carbon credit is going to be shared or how the profits of carbon credit trading can be shared. So, and also since we're here at COP, there's no concrete conclusion in terms of the revocability of authorization. For example, country like Japan, Singapore, they have the courage to be the first mover. However, what if a host country regrets sometime in the future? What if there's an election of the new government and they change the direction in terms of how we're going to leverage the carbon market? So yeah, this is kind of a very big deal we need to settle before we draw a conclusion in terms of how energy transition gonna happen, counting on the carbon market. The other thing is, for example, back into the conservative side. Yeah, I mean, this April when I was in China, I talked to lots of my friends in the carbon industries. Like China is such a big player in the voluntary carbon market. Why the government still haven't given a clear clue in terms of how Article 6 gonna be implemented in the country. And lots of them tell me, in the longer run, China may become an importer of carbon credit instead of an exporter as of now. So, yeah, I mean, for countries like China, India, those giant developing economies, they have rapid economic growth and also rapid emission growth. So I think roadmap is also important for them in terms of how to plan for their NDC and how to plan for Article 6 market. Thank you.
It does raise the question whether it's worth considering doing a regional roadmap as well, very specific to the region. Takashi, you come from Mitsui, and a private sector actor in international markets. Can you tell us a little bit about your vision or transition plan and the role of carbon markets within that, but also how how are you looking at some of the integrity issues around markets?
Yeah, firstly, for the private sector, the most important point is compliance. So in the case of Japan, the GX ETS, it started as a voluntary framework, but everybody maybe at the market, and they expect it is going to be transformed to the regulatory framework. So the first priority for Japanese industry, including Mitsui, I think the need to preparation for the future compliance. So from that point of view, 6.2, particularly JCM, it is important because these credits are contribute to Japanese NDC. But it's not enough because the private sector, most of the private company, they operating internationally. So the emission in Japan will be regulated by GX ETS in the future. However, other emission, like operation in Australia, operation in Indonesia, operation in Thailand, what kind of the regulation is expected to be there? So for the company, important thing is risk management. So no double standard is not a good thing. So it's another word is a carbon leakage. That is not good for company. So at the case, the voluntary credit, something like CBCM or other type of the voluntary credit can be used for offset of the international emission. And also the scope 3 emission, it is very difficult to identify the exact amount of the scope 3 emission, and it is unlikely to be regulated by the regulation framework. So these space are going to be covered by voluntary market. So for the private sector, related to the carbon market, combination of the energy contribution credit and the voluntary credit, that is one of the way. And I advise the Mitsui, owner of our think tank, but not only Mitsui, but also I provide advice to the many Japanese industry companies. I always same thing I explained. So better to have a combination and better to think about no double standard. That is my thought.
Thank you. And you did mention risk management, and unfortunately we're not going to have time to deal with that, and it has been spoken about many times already, the role potentially of new frameworks like the Integrity Council core carbon principles in managing some of that risk for demand side. David, just thinking about what are your thoughts on how countries in the Asia-Pacific region might be able to learn from each other and also collaborate around carbon markets? I did briefly talk about a potential regional roadmap, but other core kind of collaboration activities that you can identify?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd like to go back to my initial statement and really advocate a regional scheme for Asia Pacific. It does enable the developed countries to achieve a lower cost abatement and drive investment into those developing countries that need investment desperately. The opportunity to have a regional framework that does enable capacity building and learning off each other would be great. Maybe it's a pipe dream. Perhaps the Indo-Pacific Carbon Offset Scheme with its initial stages of capacity building is a good foundation for that. I think Australia, Fiji and Papua New Guinea are the initial signatories to that. Possibly over time other countries could consider joining that framework. I think the good thing, one of the strong aspects of the Australian market is that it's had a strong voluntary market now for the last 10 years. The buyers or offsets in Australia are very highly attuned to characteristics, integrity issues, the alignment between projects and their own businesses. And I think voluntary buyers in Australia take a very disciplined approach to their decisions around investment in projects. I think we're seeing in Singapore now an emergence of interest in offsetting, though of course driven by compliance markets. And in Japan, obviously, there's some years of experience there as well. So there's a lot those countries can do to assist other countries in the region to join and hopefully have strong regional markets.
Absolutely, and coming back to the capacity building element, and we've been doing a little bit of work with the Australian government around opportunities there, particularly for peer-to-peer learning between countries and potentially using the NDC hub as a key organisation to do that. But APAC in Fiji, I guess, what would you like to see as key initiatives or programs that might be able to help build capacity in a country such as Fiji?
Yeah. As for Fiji, like where I'm working with the Ministry of Forestry, and like we really value the limited forest resources that we have in Fiji. So that is why we came to realize the importance of protecting our forest. But also, on the other hand, there are pressures of agricultural developments because of markets, because of people, especially the indigenous communities that are depending on their forest. Like for Fiji, this for not only for Fiji, for Pacific island states, we have different land ownership. The different land ownership system that we have. Majority of the land are owned by communities, in the sense that everything we need to have to respect the rights of the communities and the indigenous people. Every development, we need to get their prior informed consent from them through the FP. It's very important for them to be well informed of any project developments. So in terms of the markets and for forestry as a whole, what they will need, the benefit sharing plan that we are preparing, especially for our RED Plus projects, because most of the forests are owned by communities. What they will goes back to them, and what will be retained by the government. So this is something that we will need to have a clear pathway, to have a clear framework on all these things before we move forward. We also have a potential on, as I've mentioned, on energy. Because in Fiji and DCs, we have very high ambitions on our energy sector. So we see the potentials also for our energy sectors. So, and I believe we've already had the discussions, bilaterals with especially Australia or other countries in the region. In the Asian regions, in terms of our carbon markets and into the future. Thanks.
Thank you. And whilst we jokingly, I suppose, talked about a regional roadmap, you do need to really recognise the diversity of countries in the Asia-Pac region and the different, for example, land tenure issues. And Fiji is unique in that regard, that about 90% of land is owned by traditional owners. So free, prior and informed consent issues differ across the region as well, but very important issues as well. I might open up to the audience now if we have any questions for the panel. I'm quite happy to take questions. And while we think, here we go.
Some understanding of Article 6 and additionality, whereby that would not be eligible for credits. Can you guys comment on whether that's an accurate understanding of how the rulebook works? Do you think there's potential for credits to be generated from those types of projects to encourage those kinds of investments?
I mean, maybe it's a limited view, but to me, the role of Article 6 and corresponding adjustments, it's mostly an accounting consideration, and the underlying projects still need to meet the requirements of a registry or an authorising body, so that you need to show the additionality, the permanence, all those core carbon principles that exist. So I'm not sure that Article 6.2 or 6.4 is going to create a new project opportunity. It might create an incentive for someone to go and write a methodology, though. But yeah, that's how I'd see it. Does that make sense?
Just a quick follow-up. So assuming that you get the emissions reductions, I guess you're saying there's no protocol for it? There's no way to do the accounting right now?
So carbon projects with credibility need to operate within a scientific framework, and those exist globally. And so your projects need to operate within one of those. They need to have a methodology that's approved within one of those frameworks, and then be implemented within that methodology. Once that's done, then they can be considered for trading under 6.2 or 6.4. That's how I'd characterise it. 6.2 and 6.4 is about moving credits between nations, between national accounts, obviously. So you need the actual underlying methodology and project to create the credits.
Okay, thank you.
May I comment? That's a really interesting question and a very important question as well. So we already know that 6.4 and 6.2, as your question is 6.4. However, I think you know very well, the 6.2 has a much bigger flexibility. So of course, the corresponding adjustment, it's a responsibility of host countries the achievement of the reduction target. That is crucial, but and also assumption. Within the assumption, much flexibility. So that's the reason why, as far as I know, Japanese government would like to push CCS, for instance, under the JCM. So I think this is a realistic option. And also the International Emission Trading Association, they released a kind of the guidance for CCS, the CCS high-level criteria last December. This criteria may cover may provide a kind of the rule book for accounting and also the item of the safeguard and sustainability. Accounting and sustainability both are covered, but that is an important element of the CCS high-level criteria published by International Emission Trading Association. So I think of course, we need to follow the actual rule, the content of the rule book 6.4, but we can have another option, and that will be a big impact. Will provide a big impact on 6.2, 6.4 rule books. Thank you.
Thank you.
We had another question.
Hello, it's me, right? I'm Erica. I'm a master's student at the University of Melbourne, Australia. And we are seeing, as you mentioned, that carbon credits are facing an increasing criticism. And I guess one of the ways to increase integrity is bringing local and traditional communities to the table in like building those methodologies. And I think Australia has like a good example. So if you could like share a little bit about this and how we can like expand this for other countries as well. Thank you.
I think you're mainly referring to the Savannah burning method in Australia. Tim is heavily involved in that method. I think across all countries working with Indigenous groups, landowners and managers who have long historical and cultural knowledge of the landscape, who are able to manage it in ways that we can only imagine, having created their own methods over thousands and thousands of years. In Australia, the savanna burning method is known as cool burning, and it enables the landscape to be burned in a way that protects it from hot bushfires in other times of the year. And I think by enabling those traditional practices, it not only sustains the landscape in a much more sustainable manner, it also empowers those communities for self-determination. So their ability to generate revenue from landscape management in a way that is sustainable and traditional enables them to also generate revenue, which they can determine themselves how they manage their communities. I think in Northern Australia, some of those communities have gone from being highly dependent on government grants to largely being able to make independent economic decisions for their communities. And you'd be hopeful that by engaging with Indigenous communities throughout Asia, particularly landowners, resource owners, for forestry projects, for REDD+ projects, the ability to incorporate cultural practices and local knowledge and management of their projects does create an alternative income stream to the alternative, which is to log their forests largely. That's the alternative. So I think there's a lot to be said for those types of projects. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I just want to add something which I really want to address, which is I think Australia is really do a good job in terms of get the indigenous people involved. I still remember like 1 year ago when the CMI had the annual climate summit, and the lady called Cici, she represented the indigenous people to deliver like a keynote speech. She cried on the stage, voiced out her concerns as an indigenous people. I think this is really a powerful moment, and I still remember this even though it's like a year ago. And in carbon market, I do believe there's a Tower of Babel we need to overcome, or in simple language, there's a language or information barrier we need to overcome. I'm not here to blame any country because most of the carbon market in this region are still very nascent. Just some of my observation, for example, countries like China and Japan, their carbon market information, carbon policies are in local language for most of the cases. Also, their trade information like daily price, daily volume is only in local language, exclusive published by the local carbon exchange. I mean, my Japanese is good enough to travel around the country, but not good enough to understand something sophisticated like carbon. And on the other hand, I also heard complaints that carbon market is too complicated for people who do not have English proficiency. So it's kind of like a mutual hurdle into this world. So, I mean, I have a minor degree in translation. I do believe translation is one of the easiest things into this world, especially given the rapid development of artificial intelligence. So I think this may be an initial first step, but overcoming that information barrier can be very powerful and very important. Thank you.
May I have a very short comment, please? I quite agree with you. The language that is important, and local knowledge, experience that is important. But I would like to say a different angle, touch upon these issues. So, as I mentioned, regarding the IATA's CCS high-level criteria, I touch upon two different languages. One is a safeguard, other is a contribution, sustainability or contribution. So I think the responsibility of the project developer and local government, at the same time we need to think about it. So the minimum requirement it be the project developer need to comply with, and contribution is necessary. However, the project company is not a local government. So the some part of the activity should be operated and responsible for by the local government. So from that point of view, I use the terminology of the contribution. So don't mix up the two different types of issues. That is my just my personal comment.
No, it's an important distinction, and I think, unfortunately, we've run out of time. We won't have time for closing comments, but I do want to give APAC an opportunity also to address perhaps this issue around local and traditional owner involvement in projects, in project developments. Coming back to your project, project design. Coming back to your question, and I think the Itauki Land Trust are already very active and interested in this area.
Thank you, Janet. I think we do not have a lot of time, but I will just try to share with us the experience of Fiji. Since Fiji, most of the resources and the land are owned by the communities or by the indigenous people. This is very important aspects. Before any development, we need to ensure that they are well informed of it needs to be carried out in their land or whatever aspects of development. So in terms of before we get their consent, then we need to have capacity building, we need to have awareness. So at this stage, it's coming back to the local, because like the English is not our, everyday language. We have our own language. So those who are at the community level, the English, when we bring down these things to them, they need to be thoroughly understand what it needs to be undertaken. So it is very important for us, especially in Fiji. We respect the indigenous people with respect to whatever development that we are doing. So we also have the Itauki, the ITLTB, which is the Itauki. It's a kind of an organization that looks after the welfare and the lands and resources of all indigenous people in Fiji. So every development, it must come through them before it goes. So we have already an existing system in place that in Fiji that will surely helps and also assist us through this when carbon markets or carbon, all these things coming in. We already have an existing system in place. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you for that clarification. So unfortunately, we have come to time, and it's been a really rich, I think, discussion around both the opportunities, but also the challenges with regards to carbon markets and Article 6 within the Asia Pacific region. So if you could just join me in thanking our panel here today, APAC, Ivy, Takashi, and David. Thank you very much.